sit down somewhere?
Mom, he's picking on me.
If you know your party's extension, please dial it now.
Houston, we have a problem.
Sick of all this complaining all the time.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
This is Multitasking in Heels podcast, and we're really excited for you guys to join us again. This podcast is for all those people who feel overwhelmed in their daily lives, and we like to consider this for the frenzied, but we also want you to know that you're also fabulous. We'll discuss topics that overwhelm people in their daily lives, but we will discuss it with a humorous bent and try and make you feel like you're not alone. We also want you to know that we wear heels because we choose to. We are not a flat discriminator. We want
You do you.
You do you. We want everyone to know that. And we like to wear heels because it makes us feel like we are going somewhere, maybe. And in 2020, who doesn't need that, little pick me up? Because even if it's going from the kitchen to the couch, because that's really where we're going when we're on lockdown, then that's what we need. And my personal disclaimer is you also might have a flat foot. So
it's a medical necessity for you.
It's a medical necessity. And, like Liz likes to wear stilettos and heels, and I like to wear boots and wedges. Yeah. So there you go. Personal choices. So, Liz, why don't you kick us off on pumps and flats?
Yes. All right. So this is for new listeners, our weekly segment where we talk about our highs and lows of the week. So your pump or your flat, So for me this week, my pump moment, which originally I was going to make my flat moment, but then realized that would be very superficial of me. So my parents were coming for an outdoor COVID visit last weekend. And I said to my daughter, go get dressed. Grandma and Grampy will be here in a little bit. So she comes downstairs wearing a sweatshirt and sweatpants.
Which is so unlike your daughter.
I know.
It really is.
I know. So,
because if you guys knew her daughter, she's very much like her mother, who is very fashionable.
So I said, Eve, Grandma and Grampy are coming in and seeing you in a while. Like, how about just maybe throwing on a pair of jeans or something instead of the sweatpants? It might just look a little bit nicer. And she had the audacity to say to me, I don't care about being stylish. I only care about being comfortable. So it reminded me of that episode of Seinfeld where George decides he's only going to wear sweatpants. Yes. And Jerry says to me, he goes, that look just says I've given up. So I was like, all right. And yeah, it's like a knife to the heart for a second. But then I was like, my daughter, she's 8 and she has more self-confidence at 8 than I might even have today, to be quite honest, but certainly more self-confidence at 8 than I did at 28. She carries herself really confidently for whatever reason. It's not DNA related for sure. She was the only girl on her baseball team last summer. She didn't care that she was out with all the boys. So the reason why I'm making this my pump moment is because it just made me realize that thank God I'm raising a daughter that is seemingly right now self-assured and confident and doesn't have that shrinking violet insecurity that I had as a kid. And I just pray that she can carry that confidence with her through the years as things get older and we hit more challenging ages and all of that. So that's my pump moment. My flat moment was I was on a conference call with one of my colleagues and he said, oh, Liz, I just have to share with you this proud parenting moment. He said, my son just got home. He was doing his physical fitness exam to get into the Naval Academy. And I guess, he's been wanting to go there forever and blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh my gosh, that's really exciting. How did he do? And he's like, oh, he totally nailed it. I'm so proud of him. And I was like, oh, well, how long has he been, preparing for this? And he's like, oh, since freshman year, he joined the football team and the track team to do conditioning. He's got straight A's, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, holy cow. And all I could think was, how can I get this guy to raise my kids? Because isn't working out really that well for me. So, because earlier that day, it was a remote learning day and they're all home and they were making so much goddamn noise that I just kept muttering under my breath, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up, shut the fuck up. And then one of them goes, Mom, who are you talking to? And I was like, oh. Apparently I was using more of a stage whisper than an actual whisper. So I was like, dear God, help me. Please have the strength to raise children that could at least be half as good as this guy's children. So yeah,
Right.
just realizing we're like in the trenches and doing the best we can. And some days it's great, some days it's awful.
Don't you like wonder how some of these people raise kids that are like, oh, my kid got into the Naval Academy or Harvard Business School, and you're like, my kid's barely passing school.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, my kid hasn't turned in his homework for 2 weeks in 7th grade. Like, what am I doing? Yes. That's right. Compassion for ourselves. Compassion for ourselves.
So those are good, Liz. Mine have to do with so my pump moment was a friend sent an article. First of all, it was finding a really, really hilarious writer. If you haven't already found her yourselves, her name, and I hope I'm not butchering it, is Scotchy Cole from BuzzFeed. She's written a bunch of books too, but she wrote an article called Jeffrey Toobin Can't Be the Only Person Masturbating on Work Zoom Calls. And this is a true story. And Jeffrey Toobin is a CNBC or MSNBC analyst, legal political analyst. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, he was caught masturbating on a Zoom call. Like,
was he looking at porn or was he like just so super jazzed about whatever they were talking about? Because I just can't imagine.
The article has so many quotable parts that it got funnier and funnier, and people need to check this out. And the best part was that I can quote is that every day that the news makes us moan in mirth instead of groan in despair is a gift. And I have to give credit where credit is due. It was came from my friend Cheryl, who sent this to me and some others, and then I promptly sent this to Liz. And it was a doozy, and it was so good. So props, Scotchy. Again, I had to look this up, and the Italian Google dictionary said that it was that. So I hope, even though you're Canadian, that is how it said. My flat moment of the week, similarly, Liz sent me an article from Scary Mommy, and it was also funny, and it was really good. And I was reading it, and I kind of groaned out loud, and my husband was within earshot. And he's like, what? And I said, I'm a terrible mom. And he's like, who's telling you that? And I said, this article. And he goes, what? And I said, basically, it's telling you in 2020 that you can't multitask properly, that you're either a good employee or a good mom, that you're not both. And sadly, I've known this for a while because I know I give more to my job than my son, and that has to change. And it has to change, and I know that. And it's times like when he'll ask me a question and I'll be answering an email and I'm concentrating on that instead of like giving him time, and it should be the other way around.
Right. And I think it's so hard because our kids, they're at an age where they're very independent. So we've come to realize that they don't need us for a lot of things. They don't need us to get them food. They don't need us to even drive them a lot of places because they could ride their bike or whatever it is. So, you know, it's easy, at least for me, and this is a terrible thing to say, it's easy to be dismissive because you're like, can you just wait? Or can you take care of that yourself or whatever? Yep. When in reality, when they're coming to us because they need something, like now's probably the most important time to listen, you know? And it's
exactly
just
right.
so hard.
It is.
so hard.
It's so hard to balance. And that's another reason why we chose to do this podcast, because I'm sure there's a million parents out there that are having this issue as well. And those are the times where I'll look back and I'll be like, oh, I just totally failed.
Right.
Like 30 minutes later. Like, why couldn't I have not sent this email? I am not going to look back and when he had a perfectly valid question that wasn't about Xbox or a game or like a dumb question. That was a really good question. And, and he's at that age where he's actually asking really good questions.
Yeah.
And like the things that he's telling me, he's proud of. And so I have to start paying attention better. So
I know. Easier said than done in the moments when, like, I'll take some time to play like a game of Uno with Avery on like her remote learning day. And I can hear my laptop in my office just going ding, ding, ding with all the emails that come in. And it's like, oh, my anxiety rises, and it's just, and that's again, another side effect of stupid COVID is that there's no separation of work and personal life. And it makes it harder than ever to have any type of balance, quote unquote, separation or whatever, because it's all just lumped into one big environment.
It is. And it like you said, when you hear that, and that's a perfect analogy, like the tenseness in your, like my back and like the anxiety, and you want to be fully in the moment.
Present. Yeah.
And it's so hard.
I can't remember the last time I was like fully present in a moment, whether it was at work or with my kids, because there's always some competing distraction going on, and there aren't enough CBD gummies in the world to make that anxiety go away.
Oh, you're right.
I mean, I still pop them like Tic Tacs, but
Oh
man. Should we get into our topic of the day?
Yes. So this episode is about do as I say and not as I do. And moreover, I would say the subheading of this is how scared we are as parents that our kids are going to do what we did as kids, teenagers. Which they will, but it dawned on me when I saw it was a Twitter comment from a guy that was reposted to Instagram, and it said something like, are you totally surprised that we didn't all die as teenagers and were found in a ditch somewhere after all the crazy shit we did? And yes, I'm like always surprised. So back in the day, growing up, and I think you also were saying something like earlier, you will talk about it, that you were a good kid, you were a rule follower.
Yes.
I was a rule follower. I was like in student council. I was a rule follower. I didn't like do anything bad, but I still like lied to my parents once in a while because you do, but I wasn't like over the top liar to my parents. Right. So, my girlfriends and I, got together, and there was this really nice kid in high school who had an exchange student that was from Spain. Really good looking soccer star. And he was getting ready to leave and go back home. And he thought it was a good idea, probably urged on by some of my friends, to throw a big party for him to go away. Because this kid's parents weren't home. And so he decided to do some flyers. Flyers are the equivalent of a social media
Hard copy social media.
Yeah.
Guerrilla marketing there.
Exactly. And so that's back in the day. There was Xeroxes flying around, and it was the equivalent.
Did you smell it after?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it was like, it was like from a movie scene where it was in like the quad, and like a gust of wind just like took like 150 flyers and like made them go all over the place. So this was like the biggest party. It goes down in the annals of school history. Wow. People came from far and wide. So that night, I don't know if my mom kind of knew maybe something was going on, but my brother was 2 years younger. I was 16. He was 14. He was going to a birthday party. So my mom decides that she's going to make me pick him up later that night. So I'm thinking that she's going to be like, okay, well, I'm going to make her be responsible. So I was like, I am not missing out on this party. So I'm going to, and I had been like the designated driver for like a lot of different parties. So my friends and I Rochambeau, and we vote my 15-and-a-half-year-old friend, who doesn't have a license, to be the designated driver of my car. We all were straight A students. Like, in what world is that a good idea? And if my son, like, even like, I would strangle him. Yes. So we go to this party. It gets broken up probably immediately. The cars were backed up for miles, like parked on like
out of a movie.
It is something out of a movie. And thank goodness, like, this kid lived out in the woods. So it was a fun party for a while because there's not many neighbors. So until the cars got backed up to like the first neighbor's house, I think that's when it got called. So my best gay guy friend, he gets in my car. My 15-and-a-half-year-old girlfriend, she's the sober driver. We get in the car. He's screaming in the back to get us out of there because he's like freaking out that the cops are coming. Yeah. So we're off. Remember, we have to go pick up my brother. It's dark because we're out.
Everyone in the car drunk, and you're going to pick up your poor 14-year-old brother at a birthday party. Okay.
We go, and it's dark, and we are out in the sticks, and this birthday party is kind of out in that general area. We take a wrong turn, and we go up this long driveway, and we knew that the birthday party was up a long driveway. We get there. I get out of the car, and the porch lights go on, and this man comes out with a shotgun. Oh,
my God.
And I said, I think this isn't the birthday party. I don't know what clued me in.
Right. The shotgun?
Here I am, 16 years old.
Oh my God.
15-and-a-half-year-old, 15-and-a-half-year-old, no license driving, gay best friend in the back screaming.
It's not a hillbilly.
Yeah, and a hillbilly point, and legit, because we lived in a hillbilly town. Oh my goodness. I'm like, this is like a movie. And so at that point though, I'm starting to sober up real quick. My girlfriend puts my car, my shitbox Chevy Citation, inherited through my papa, puts it in reverse, backs into a huge boulder. Then I'm like even more worried. Like, now I'm going to be found out if I'm not shot first.
Right.
And we're getting in an accident in Hillbilly's driveway. And we still haven't picked up my brother. So I push her over because now I'm totally sober. My car's just been wrecked, whatever. So my car was dented, but not bad. Like, but enough that if my mom and dad really paid attention, they would be like, what'd you do? But I was like, oh, I could probably get out of this.
Explain that away.
Yes. We drive down this guy's driveway. He's still like pointing a gun at us. We get to the birthday party. I'm yelling at my brother because I was so stressed out. We get home safely and all is good.
Oh my god! Did your brother, when your brother got in the car, was he like, "What happened in here?" Like, 'cause you've got like a car full of drunk people.
Yes. And the other funny thing is that Raimi, my friend, was like the stud at a camp. This is like a camp that my brother went to when they were younger, and he hadn't seen Raimi since that camp. And he was like, my brother, I think, probably thought he went into the Twilight Zone because he's like, where did you come from? And like, and everyone was like, it was just probably a nightmare from Christmas from everybody. And
the Twilight Zone.
yes, and we got home safely. My mom thought everyone was like fine. I stayed far away from her so she couldn't smell us, and we got home safely. Thank God.
Thank God. Thank God.
But oh my God.
Right. So many parts of that story that if it went a different way, you could be dead right now.
We could be dead, shot, in jail, and like every piece of that. If Braden did any of that, I would have a heart attack 10 times over.
Like you said, you're a straight A student. Like, you're smart person.
But I had a negative 2.0 GPA in common sense. And that is what I'm afraid of with our kids, because their common sense is horrible.
Non-existent.
Because they're constantly on their phones.
Right. They don't really even know how to thoughtfully process anything, I don't think.
No. So they are worse in the common sense department than we were. So this is why
it's terrifying.
I am so scared. So Liz, what did you do when you were
similarly, as you said, like, I was a total rule follower growing up, like National Honor Society, blah, 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 total music nerd, whatever. Like, I don't have any stories like yours from high school, because like I just was too much of a dork, and
I don't believe that you're a dork.
I was a dork. It's fine, you know. But you know, again, like, lived in fear, and still to this day, to a certain extent, I live in fear of getting in trouble. Like, it just makes me sweat, and I don't like it. So I have a couple of stories in particular from college, so that fall into this do as I say, not as I do category. The first is, when I was in college, I was dating, and I use that term loosely, a guy from home who went to college out of state, like a plane ride away, like halfway across the country. And he had a fraternity formal coming up, and he wanted me to go. And I knew there was no fucking way my parents were going to let me fly halfway across the country and stay in a fraternity house with my boyfriend, because that's only something whores do. And so we'll get into my repressed Catholic upbringing on another episode. But I wanted to go, of course, like, I didn't want to miss out. So I bought a plane ticket. I wrote a check for the plane ticket. And this was back in the day, pre-online banking, pre-e-commerce, because I'm old. And all my bank statements got sent home to my parents' house. And my dad would always look at them because he wanted to see how I was spending my money. Like, my dad always taught my sisters and I the value of like earning money and saving money and being smart with your money and blah, blah, blah. And so he saw every month where I was spending my money. And so he saw that there was this check for it, and it was like $350, which, like, it's a lot of money for me at 18 or 19 or however old I was. And he's like, "What's this check for?" And I somehow off the cuff, like, made up some excuse that it was for my sorority, and he somehow bought it, or maybe he didn't, but he didn't push. So, the formal was taking place over some long weekend, like Columbus Day or Veterans Day or whatever, where normally I would go home. But I told my parents, instead of coming home, I was going to go to a friend's house. I was going to go home with her, and she lived in Maine. So they seemed to buy that. But then they were like, "Well, call us when you get there," because I'm still a child. So I fly out to my boyfriend's college, at some point over the weekend, I call my parents and they're like, "Oh, how's everything going? Oh, let us call you back." Because again, this is like I was calling on like a hard line phone, and they were like, "Oh, we don't want them to have to pay for this phone call, so we'll call you back." I'm like, "Not necessary. We're leaving now." Like I pretty much like hung up on them. So we go to the formal. We have a blast. I'm wearing this really cute, tight, short black dress that probably did make me look like a whore. Whatever. It was purchased at a store. And if anybody listening knows this store, you're just gonna fucking die. Called Tempo Casuals.
Oh yes.
Which
we have that.
okay,
Too.
which was appropriately nicknamed Contrampo, because it honestly like sold clothing that would make Forever 21 look like runway couture.
Yeah.
So that's what I wore. And I fly home, all's good, whatever. Fast forward a couple months and my parents come visit me at school and they're in my dorm room. And I just look over my dad's shoulder and I'm like, fuck. Plain as day on my bulletin board is a picture of my boyfriend and I from the formal with like, again, might as well have been lit up in lights, like the blah, blah, blah fraternity formal and the date and all of that. And I was like, oh, I'm like, can we go to lunch now? So, and my dad, he apparently also saw the photo, but to his credit, he did not say anything to me in front of my mom. Instead, he waited till I came home for whatever, maybe it was Thanksgiving or Christmas, I don't know, whatever, and sat me down and he's like, we saw the picture and we know you went and we know you lied and you shouldn't really do that. But I think he was more disappointed in me that I was so stupid that I left the picture out knowing they were coming to visit. But that was like, you know, my dad has always been able to like, when I was growing up, talk to me in sort of this like calm, hey, was that like a good choice type of thing, rather than coming at it like, I can't believe you did that, like so disappointing, you know what I mean? And like, which is great.
It's great. My dad was like that too.
Mhm.
And it, I think, helps the conversation so much more because you end up getting further. When I had another one of those in high school where I seriously was so stupid at sometimes that I am like scared for my child.
Right.
We had a party at a friend's house just down the road, like a mile from my house. Do I think that my parents are going to just do a drive-by?
Right.
Apparently I didn't. So I was like, Regina's parents are gone, so I'm going to just stay the night with her. Stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And my parents know what my friends drive.
Yep.
They did a drive-by. They saw my boyfriend's truck, my other guy friend's truck, that guy, other guy friend's truck.
Mm-hmm.
And the other funny thing is that Regina's grandma lives down the street, like down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody came to the door, all the guys went out on her porch.
Mm-hmm.
So the grandma saw it from the bottom of the hill.
Oh,
so
God.
we were literally dumb. So the next morning,
Mm-hmm.
my mom and dad were out on the deck and they're like, how was Regina's? You know, you and the girls have fun watching movies.
Oh.
And I was like, yeah.
Also, they didn't blow up your spot and just barge right in and be like,
Right.
Wow.
And then they just sat there and looked at me and waited for me to like come clean. And they just stared at me and then I knew.
Oh.
And I was like, so the guys came over too. They're like, yeah, we know.
Oh.
And I was like, how did you know?
Mm-hmm.
Again, common sense.
Right.
We live a mile away. We have a car. We drove by. We saw all the boys' cars. It's not like you have to put two and two together. Right. Oh, right.
But at that age, you think you're so smart and you think you're invincible and you don't think you're going to get caught. Because it probably never occurred to you that your parents would drive by, right?
It didn't.
Yeah.
But literally, if you think one step past your own, like,
but you don't.
You don't.
Like so like egocentric or whatever the term
That's
is.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah. And like, it would be like not even the equivalent of here to like Dunkin' Donuts, which
Mhm.
for our listeners out there, it is a mile away,
Mhm.
a mile away. And it's the easiest thing to hop in your car and go see
Yeah.
and come back. I mean, you could walk there too
Yes.
and be like, I just need a little jaunt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's terrible. And the other story from college that I thought would be good to share, which is like quite honestly, when I think about it, is terrifying because it's again, if our kids ever did this, I would die. Went to a fraternity party at an apartment on campus, and it was thrown by some guys I was friends with, and I got so drunk. I mean, as everybody does at these parties, but I passed out on our couch, and the next morning, or it was probably just a few hours later in the morning, woke up in my bed in my apartment on campus. And I was like, had no recollection of how I got there. Couldn't even really remember the end of the night. I had all my clothes on from the night before, and I looked at the bottom of my socks and they were all dirty. I had fucking walked without my shoes on, Lindsay, across a college campus at God knows what hour in the morning with zero recollection at all of doing so. I somehow managed to get into our apartment building, somehow managed to find my apartment, somehow managed to find my bedroom and get into bed. And I was like, I have no recollection of how I ended up here. And so I called their apartment and they were like, where did you go? We were really worried about you. And I'm like, are my shoes there? And they're like, yeah, you can come get them anytime. So like, and I have a daughter. And so with that comes a certain amount of like educating her about smart choices and not putting yourself in bad positions and all of that. And like telling that story just like makes me think about that. Remember that awful story from a few years, that fucking psycho from Stanford, the swimmer who raped that girl behind the awful,
yes,
awful.
yes,
And I was like, well, very well could have been me.
yes.
And God forbid could be my daughter if she doesn't make smart choices. And,
Yeah.
you know, we need to educate our sons that they are responsible for watching out for other women and girls and whatever, making sure they're not in vulnerable positions. And it's just, I don't know, so many times we got lucky, like, you know, getting through things by the skin of our teeth. And that is the one thing, like, especially where kids have access to so much more, like beyond alcohol these days, you know, they have access to edibles, they have access to their parents' pharmaceuticals, they have access, you know, so much more so than what we had.
Exactly.
And
easy access.
easy access.
Like I remember in high school, the only access you might have had was like to like Grand Marnier or triple sec.
Right.
And it was like, okay, we'll take this. And I remember like Rami and I trying to find like booze before, and it was always like nasty shit.
Yes.
And you're like,
But you drink it anyway.
okay, well, like, you know, gag down this whatever has been in there forever, blue curacao or whatever. And because that was the only thing that you could find. But you're right, they have too much easy access to things.
Yes. And I read an article a while ago that, you know, because a lot of kids today, they take medication to help them with different things, whether it's ADHD or anxiety or whatever, that those kids are more prone to experimenting with drugs because they're used to taking something. So just, you know, I don't know, I feel like we have so many more intense conversations that we have to have with our kids at a lot earlier age than our parents had to do with us.
Oh, I agree. And like just being where we are and having like dispensaries down the road and you know, driving by and my son goes, Mom, why is there a backup there? What is that place? And I'm like, oh, it's where people can get medical marijuana. And he's like, right now he's saying, ew, gross. And he's saying that in front of me, but who knows what his friends say?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly. I know.
So.
It's terrifying. I also did get a tattoo and pierce my belly button without telling my parents. So those decisions did not go over well with them. But I realized like collectively these stories make me sound like a pretty garbage human being, but I swear they were spread out over a few years. And I'm like, I'm good for like one toxic decision a year, I feel like.
And is this still going on in your life?
I think the toxic decisions I'm making now are related to online shopping and
That's
wine
okay.
consumption.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those aren't super healthy either, but
No,
you know,
but those, yes.
better
Those
than
are
binge
insane.
drinking and, you know, blacking out.
Yes. Oh, should we get to what's in the box?
What's in the box? Yes.
Okay, I'll go first.
All right.
And so I never ever thought that I would buy something like this. But two things that were in my Amazon basket this week, and it was only because I did it for a friend
That's what they all say.
at work. But I bought Kurt Cobain clout glasses. That's what they're called.
What does clout mean?
I don't
Like,
know.
I mean, I know what the word means, but like as it relates to this product.
So that's just what the Kurt Cobain clout
style?
the style,
Okay.
I guess. And I don't even want to say this word out loud. A cosplay wig.
Are you going to Renaissance fairs on the weekends and not telling me?
No. I brought him up in my last episode, but my friend is pregnant and she's going as Jocelyn from Schitt's Creek. Pregnant Jocelyn, and we have a deep love, just like you and our friends, for Schitt's Creek. And so she wanted me to go as David Rose, and I was like, no. And then I was like, oh, and I was like, okay, maybe. And then I just bought the wig and bought the glasses. And the funny thing is that I'm not even going to be at work on the day
Right.
of the Halloween.
Yeah, where will you guys be wearing these costumes?
Well, that's the funny thing. So, first and foremost, is I'm not really a dresser-upper.
Right.
And secondly, I did it just to like have a picture taken for her or with her. Her husband is going to be Roland, which I think is freaking
That's amazing.
amazing. And so I was like, I'm going to do this for her. And I also want to do it to like either DM Daniel Levy and just be like, we love you. Super fan. And that's the only reason.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Yes.
Well, my what's in the box is not quite as exciting this week. I did have to purchase more readers because my body is physically deteriorating as we sit here, and I can't see anything ever. However, they did come in a box with boys' underwear and 9-volt batteries. So you just really never know how Amazon is going to package all of your necessities. And I was like, is this something like a serial killer would get in the mail? So yeah, that's what I've got.
Isn't that the best though?
Right.
When you like have to get a bunch of different stuff and you don't know what's gonna come in that box.
And that's what makes it so exciting. Right. Oh my gosh. So thank you, all you frenzy but fabulous listeners, for joining us again today. If you like what you hear, please rate, subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. Please interact with us on Facebook or Instagram. We'd love to hear future topic ideas from you guys. Any feedback is welcome as long as it's constructive, because Lindsay, what's our motto?
If you are not in that arena also getting your ass kicked, we are not interested in your feedback.
Yes, we have very fragile egos. But thank you for listening, everybody. Bye.
Bye.